All right, I'm here with Keith Compay from Locked On Sixers and the Sixers beat writer for the Philly Inquirer. How are you doing today, Keith?
Man, I'm doing well. What about you?
Awesome, awesome. We're here to talk some Sixers playoff basketball. But before we get there, I had to talk a little bit about how they got here because to me, this has been probably the most consistent Sixers team in recent history. They were almost first in the conference from almost start to finish, I think you could say. So, what do you think has been the biggest improvement with this Sixers team over the past few seasons?
That's a great question. Because I keep going back and forth, but ultimately I think Doc Rivers. I think, because if you think about it, in past years we were always told that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid could not coexist, right? They just said it. You got to trade one of the two. Doc Rivers comes in, they're playing together well, and I think that you look at Tobias Harris. A year ago everyone was talking about Tobias Harris wasn't living up to the contract, living up to the salary, right? And now Tobias Harris is having a career year. And I think that those two things are attributed to Doc Rivers, his coaching, the way that he has these guys buying in. So to me, Doc Rivers is the biggest difference and biggest influence on this season.
We're talking about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons a little bit here. And obviously, they both just came up a little bit short in MVP and Defensive Player of the Year races, respectively. In your opinion, should either of those players won those awards?
That's a tough one. I mean, when you look at Joel Embiid, he put up great numbers. I mean, like Hall of Fame type statistics, right? The only problem is he missed 21 games. And you look at Nikola Jokic, and here's a guy who played in all 72 games of a grueling season. And you look at his statistics, and most of his stats were better than Joel's. So I think that's the reason why it was such a landslide. The Ben Simmons thing, is weird. Ben could play 5 different positions. He could do a lot of different things. The only problem is just that I think that people were looking at it like, okay, well, we're seeing Matisse Thybulle guarding the other team's leading scorer. So I think that kind of messed Ben up a little bit. But I think that Ben should have been the defensive player of the year. Now, Joel, I understand why he didn't get it, but Ben got my vote in regards to defensive player of the year.
Ben's versatility, like it's something that you just mentioned there, is just something that you don't see across the NBA today. And then with Gobert, I just kind of wonder, is it familiarity from the voters? They're so used to, he's a previous defensive player of the year. Does that have anything to play in there at all as well?
I think also, when you look at it, like the voting, again, I'm a voter, right? So what they do is they give you a list of names, and there's some people who you look at it and you say, let me look at the stats. And you see where Rudy Gobert is like ranked in his first or second in a lot of different categories. You see him blocking shots. So then all of a sudden, you really don't watch the games. You just see the clips. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I'm going to go with him. And the reason that I think Ben may have gotten robbed is because, when you look at him, you'll say, wow, but he wasn't on the other team's best scorer. And then also you see Ben doing all the intangible things, like he's guarding 5 different positions. When you do that, it's hard to really showcase what you can do. You understand what I'm saying? Because it's like you're all over the place. And I think that when you have people and they just go off of stats without knowing what a person brings to a team, then that's how a guy like a Ben Simmons will, get snubbed. According to a lot of people, he got snubbed, and that's why he got snubbed, because he's just too versatile.
Right. The team was able to work its way through the Washington Wizards, just a little hiccup there. But the biggest scare, I think, in that series for everybody was the Joel Embiid injury. I really, coming back into the series with the Hawks, you don't really know what to think until he shoots up game 1 and game 2, and he drops 79 points. I mean, are you surprised at the way he's been able to recover from this knee injury?
Let me tell you this. If I did not see Joel before game 5, the closeout game against Washington, on the floor, because he did a workout. If I did not see Joel doing that workout, I would be shocked. I mean, I'm talking about really shocked. Now, here's the deal. Because Joel comes out, right? He doesn't play in that game. And, everybody's writing about the torn meniscus. He's like dribbling the ball between his legs, doing step back threes, doing fadeaways off of the bum knee. And I'm like, okay, is something wrong with him? Like, is something really wrong with him? So when you see that, and you see that he's followed that up at practice, he's doing all those other things. So then you realize, like, nah, it's nothing going to stop this guy right now. it's nothing going to stop him. And I guess he's fortunate that it wasn't worse. But, I'm not surprised, man, because Joel's just a dominant force. And if you would have witnessed that workout, you would have been like, well, how come Joel's not playing in game 5? That's how good he looked.
Right, absolutely. Game 1, we saw the Sixers get down early to the Hawks, and then really it was pretty much being forced to play catch up the entire time, almost caught it in the air. Game 2 saw the team a little bit more in control. After seeing the first 2 games, which game do you think is more symptomatic of what we're going to see throughout the rest of the series?
I think game 2, but also leaning more towards game 2. But, I think it's a little bit in between, because if you notice, as good as the Sixers are, they have had lapses. They have had like letdown games, right? So, and so I think that with the Sixers, sometimes the Sixers become their own worst enemy, so what they need to do is they need to remain locked in. And I don't know if they're going to come out with that fire that they did in game 2, but at the same time, they have to realize that we're the big bag Sixers, bigger than everyone else. And if they do that, I believe they'll be okay. But I'm here to tell you, they're going to have some lapses, going on. And Sixers fans are going to get a little frustrated at the team, but I still think they'll win this series.
And I think one of those lapses in game 1 was Trae Young. I mean, he was able to get his game going, get a pickup foul calls, and get his buckets. And he really had it game 1. Game 2, we made some defensive adjustments. The Sixers went out there, got Ben Simmons on him a little bit more. Obviously, Ben didn't get into any real foul trouble in game 2, so it ended up working pretty well. Do you think that's the game plan for Trae Young the rest of the way for the Sixers to try to win this series?
I do. And the way they did it, like they kept switching them on to Tobias, you know what I mean? So, you just had length around the whole time. I think that's what the Sixers need to do. And also, here's something else. The fact that Ben Simmons didn't get Defensive Player of the Year is going to motivate him. Like, Ben's the type of guy, when you say he can't do something, he's out to prove you wrong. And I think the fact that he didn't get Defensive Player of the Year is going to bode well for the Sixers in this series.
Right, and he's going to be facing players that he has the chance to show his abilities against. Trae Young, and then I think every Sixers fan is dreaming on that possible series with the Nets, and he's going to have a trio of players to guard. So if the Sixers are lucky enough to finish off these Hawks and they meet the Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals, who guards who? Who's Ben on?
That's a crazy one right then. Do you want to say Harden, right? You want to say Harden and then possibly put Matisse on Kyrie. But then the problem is who's going to guard KD? You know what I mean? That's the problem. Like, do you want to put Embiid on him? So, I mean, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see guys flipping, like switching. Like, okay, Ben, you guard this guy at this moment. Okay, Matisse, you guard someone else. And here's another thing. We're talking about Matisse, right? Guarding. Matisse is coming off the bench. So who's going to guard that guy from the start of the game? Is it Danny Green? So yeah, that's the Brooklyn Nets. As good as the Sixers are playing, I think the Brooklyn Nets is the one team that just presents a matchup problem because you say who's Ben going to guard, but who's going to guard Joe Harris? So that's the one team, in my opinion, that it's going to be a tall order for the Sixers to beat.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Matisse coming off the bench. One of the thoughts that I had and kind of wondered if Doc might consider that as well, is that someone you switch out for Danny Green in the starting lineup? Maybe Danny Green comes off the bench and you have Matisse out there just for the defensive purposes of that series.
That's a great question. And I was thinking long and hard about that. I think if Danny Green continues to struggle, it's a possibility. I think if he doesn't, I think that you want to keep Danny in a starting lineup. And here's the reason. Danny to me is the glue guy. He's a better shooter than Matisse, right? But he is the glue guy. And when you look at his role in the starting lineup, you have Seth, who's a shooter, Joel, a dominant force, Ben, the distributor, Tobias, the slasher, right? Well, Danny is the guy that brings it all together, telling guys where to go. So if you bring him off the bench, typically you're going to want him to be the offensive force. And at this stage right now, he's more of putting out the fires. I don't know if that role will suit him well. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I just don't see that. So to me, though, if he continues to struggle, you may have to do that. But right now, You just want to hope that he gets out of this little slump. That way you can keep him as that glue guy.
Ultimately, we're talking Sixers Nets. I think the big question on everybody's mind is, do they even have a chance? Is there a chance for the Sixers to win that series and possibly make an appearance in the NBA Finals?
See, now I may double talk because I said I felt like the Sixers didn't match up well against them a moment ago. Now, the thing is, when I watched the Brooklyn Nets in the first 2 games against Milwaukee, I said to myself, the dream team doesn't have a chance against them, right? You know what I mean? with the USA squad. But now you look at it and they lost to Milwaukee in game 3 and you say, wow, now if you come up with a great game plan, you know, maybe you can contain them, especially if Harden doesn't play, right? So I think there's a chance. I think it's a huge uphill battle for the Sixers, though. Like, you know, I wouldn't, if I had a lot of money, I don't think I would bet on the Sixers, right? But I think they still have a chance. But I don't know. I feel like Brooklyn's coming out of the East.
Looking at Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and together, you know, obviously we've been dreaming on an NBA Finals title for quite a few years now. And, you know, they've been together for a couple playoff runs, but something about this one feels a little bit different to me. And just looking at how the future of the Eastern Conference might shape out, it makes me wonder, is this the best shot that this iteration of the Sixers team has at an NBA Finals title with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid at the lead?
You know, this is funny because I think it's the best shot they had since 2001, right? But something tells me that they're going to be better next year. I mean, something does. And the reason being is because when you look at it, they have a new coaching staff. You know, they still have like guys like Danny Green and them are going to come off the books. They're going to be able to bring in other players, right? When you factor all that stuff in and the fact that they really didn't get to practice a lot this year, you know, I think that next year is going to be a year that they take a leap. And this is crazy because they finished number 1 in the East. But I feel like a year under Doc, you know, off-season workout plan and all this other stuff, and Daryl Morey being able to have a all-season to go, a real all-season to go and get free agents to make trades and stuff like that. You know, I feel like the Sixers are going to be better next year. I really do.
Well, we can't wait for the rest of this series and what else the rest of the playoffs might have to hold for us. Sixers tip off tonight. 7:30 is what it's set for on TNT, but we all know that's going to get pushed back to about 8 o'clock for the TV times. Keith Pompey from Locked On Sixers and Sixers beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can hear Locked On Sixers anywhere you get your podcasts, and you can follow Keith at Pompey on Sixers. Keith, thanks for joining us today.
Man, thanks for having me.